Now, civil rights group My Vote Counts wants political parties to disclose all their donors. The group has taken legal action in order to remove the 100,000 rand threshold for the Political Party Funding Act. But not all parties are happy with this move. Action SA says it will file court papers opposing the litigation launched by My Vote Counts. But how do other parties feel about this? Well, let's speak to ANC's Treasurer General, Gwen Ramokgopa. She's speaking to us virtually. Thank you very much, Ms. Ramokgopa, for your time here on eNCA. Obviously, the president has been cited as a respondent. Political parties with seats in parliament have also been cited. What will the ANC, for instance, say in its argument when you file your responding papers?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you and the viewers. The important issue for us are principles. First and foremost, the principle of mobilizing South Africans, both individual citizens and corporate citizens, to contribute towards strengthening the democracy. The legislation as it is, the Political Party Funding Act, does constitute that framework, and we welcome it fully. The difficulties are that there is an onerous administrative obligation. That's the feedback we got from a number of companies. And they are saying that there are already controls in the finance environment that they are subjected to, and they don't want it to be misconstrued, that they don't, the issue of disclosure, but their motivation is that the administrative onerous procedures are a barrier. And that's one thing that we have picked up. And the second issue is also the threshold. We know that our position as ANC is that the state must fully fund, but we know that the state has other responsibilities, education, health, and others, and that it may be difficult for the state to immediately fully fund. So we want a framework where we encourage corporate through the IC, obviously through the law, to fund beyond the set limitability, absolutely non-negotiable.
And I know
but
that
there are many other instruments other than just through the fund.
There's also the ANC wanting the threshold to be moved up to 500,000 rand instead of 100,000 rand. So a lot of people would ask why you want, those only who give you from 500,000 rand up to disclose themselves. That's already 500,000, a lot of money, and it can go against what the act is trying to deal with, which is basically just favors being done for each other in exchange for, donations.
We, as I've indicated, the contribution, the limits that have been given has also presented huge constraints in an environment where the full funding by the public sector cannot as yet be achieved. And I think we need to reach that balance. And we know that the Political Party Funding Act has made provision for a multi-party funding fund which is IEC managed. So we want to encourage corporate South Africa, if they don't want to fund a political party directly, let them fund through IEC so that the IEC can assist us to really strengthen our democracy through the resources that we as South African individual and corporate citizens contribute. This is our democracy. We have limited foreign influence, foreign funding, only to issues of research and training, and we need to carry our own democracy. And I would really appeal to South Africans and all other parties, including Action SA civil rights organizations, to rather strengthen the accountability measures and also the right of the public, even the public protector and such independent institutions to do investigations should there be any suspicion of wrongdoing, than to put a lot of barriers for South Africans to fund their own democracy.
Isn't that what the My Vote Counts is basically trying to achieve by saying that the PPFA should be strengthened so that to a point where political parties are compelled to also, let the public know if I give the ANC, for instance, R1, just a single rand, they want that to be known so that it's quite clear who's giving each party what. So isn't that what they're trying to achieve? Instead of having investigations, it's all out in the open already from the beginning or on the onset.
I appreciate that. And that is why we are available to have a discussion. And I don't think there is a need for litigation. We have a common values, common approach, common objectives. What we are saying is that even the 50 rands, it doesn't have to be only 100,000 that is subject to audit. Even a 50 rands, if given by to a political party, it should be subject to audit. It should be subject to our financial control systems against money laundering and such misdemeanors happening through our banks, through our all other instruments that we have, that we are strengthening not only through the Party Political Funding Act, but also through instruments like Anti-Corruption Act. So let party funding be subjected to all other controls that are there, not only the Political Party Funding Act. And let's not limit the amounts that can be assessed by the Auditor General. But the only thing is that let's not make it onerous for political parties to be funded, especially by our own citizens and also corporate citizens as well.
One of the arguments by the civil society organization, Gwen Ramokgopa, is that it says that it doesn't make sure that there's regulation around cumulative donations. So they give an example by one of the ANC's biggest donors, Patrice Motsepe, saying that he owns numerous companies and he would basically give money from those different companies, and then it amounts to more than the threshold from one person, but it doesn't necessarily regulate that. So there's loopholes in this act, and it will amount to like your 15 million, etc. What's your response to that?
The first step I took after taking office about 6 months ago was also to request a meeting with the IEC to fully understand how we can comply. And one of the issues that was raised was exactly that. And I agree that we need to be able to tighten regulations. This is a virgin regulatory framework for political party funding. And we need to improve on it. We have had a situation, for instance, since I was in office, that a company funds us above the limit, and the IEC alerted the company even before we were aware, and corrective measures were taken. So all of us, if we are interested in strengthening funding it in a manner that is open, the state capture situation that we fight quite decisively.
All right, just my last question to you, TG. I just have to ask this question. At some point last year or the year before, we did see, for instance, members of the ANC or employees of the ANC marching against the ANC for non-payment of salaries, etc. That went on for a couple of months. And then there was a link between that and the Political Party Funding Act, right? When you came into office, for instance, as the TG, how did you find the books? Were they balancing?
Well, yes, our financials, including the balance sheet, were presented to conference, of which I was part of. And indeed, we did have cash flow difficulties, but there are assets that the ANC has. The finances are still very tight, and I've had to issue a directive that nobody can commit the ANC without prior authorization, that there must be efficiencies, that we must also begin a process of paying creditors, which we have. And I'm glad that we have finally paid what we owed SARS. And also we had other debts. There are still other debts that we're still going through. We have not achieved full stabilization, but we have certainly made sure that we are in a position to operate in a reasonable manner. And I am comfortable that with the cooperation that we have received from all NEC members, from also our own deployees who are now contributing an increased amount in terms of levies, we are on a road to recovery.
And would the Political Party Funding Act, is it, you know, obviously the donations that you get from the public, business people, etc., that would also help with your books, right? If the threshold is, for instance, moved to 500,000, and there are those, because I remember the ANC reacting at some point during the first time that we found out who's donating to who. They were saying that some donors want to give more than the 100,000, but they opt not to because they don't want to be known. So by having the threshold moved to 500,000, I'm assuming that will help your books even further?
Most certainly it would help the hesitant corporates. But I think corporate South Africa has been very generous, and individuals for the programs that we have requested funding for. That funding has come through. But what they don't to be subjected to is the whole concept of donations, because of the stringent, onerous administrative requirements of the PPFA. So, and I think corporate South Africa must talk amongst itself so that we can deal with the impasse that seems to be there. I think we all agree that we have to be open, transparent, and certainly all parties will benefit, not only the African National Congress. If corporate South Africa becomes, becomes at ease. In other countries, you know, it's the same thing. The companies are free, open, and confident to say, we fund this, we fund that, because of the policies that can take our country forward. So a stable democracy with accountable political parties funded by the citizenry, whether at individual or corporate level, would create a greater stability for our country and also to strengthen our democracy to date.
I have to agree with you when you talk about corporate, Gwen, because of the fact that we know even with state capture, it was the corruptor and the corruptee. You know what I mean? The corruptee was obviously business or the private sector, etc. And I'm assuming you want them to also speak out so that we're also clear as citizens that whoever donated to certain parties that and he or she didn't want to be known, there's questions around that person as well, not just the political party they're vying for.
Yes, usually state captures and corruption and fraudulent activities on the table. So corporate South Africa must be free to be open and say, I'm funding this or that party for this and that reason. The policies that advances children, that advances education, the policies that manages better the issue of immigration and all that, so that it's open and transparent. And that's what would make our country much more stable. What goes under table, brown envelopes, that's really what is a threat.
Yeah, there's a giver and a receiver. Well,
yes,
thank you so much.
The giver and the receiver. Let them be open and transparent about it.
Thank you very much for giving us your time and for speaking to us here on eNCA. That is the ANC's Treasurer General, Gwen Ramokgopa.